Okay, so I will be demonstrating isolation procedures. Anytime anyone is in isolation, we typically will have an isolation cart sitting on the outside of the room. And the isolation cart contains all the PPEs, personal protective equipment, that you would need while taking care of someone in isolation. And they'll have the drawer arranged according to your facility's policy. So typically in the top drawer we would have things like the face mask, shields. Second drawer is usually designated for things like the isolation gowns. You may also find gloves in there. And then the third drawer is usually isolated for or designated for the isolation bags, the biohazard isolation bags. Anytime you're dealing with someone who is in isolation, as I said, you want to have everything on the outside, but also have, usually found in the isolation cart, you'll also have disinfectant wipes and hand sanitizer. Now for this particular procedure, I'm just going to be demonstrating how to put on and take off a gown, gloves, and mask. Now depending on your circumstances, you may have to add more PPEs. For example, you may have to add some goggles and some booties. But this is just basic isolation. If you have to add on more, if you're following principles, it will not be difficult to put on or take off those PPEs. So before you get started, always make sure you have in your pocket a pen and some paper where you can record your vital signs or whatever you're going to do. So that's going to be on the inside of your pocket. Your uniform and everything else is considered clean as we are talking about isolation procedures. I took off my watch and I placed it here on this barrier. I'm coming from the scenario that there's no clock in the room, so I would need to have my watch close by where I can count their vitals or count their pulse and their respirations. So my watch goes on a barrier on the outside. My watch goes on a barrier that I place in the room so that my watch will always stay clean. As I said, I have a piece of paper to record my vital sign. So the first thing I want to do is to wash my hands. So using hand sanitizer, I'm washing my hands. When you're using hand sanitizer, make sure you get enough to cover the entire surface of your hands, the same areas that you would cover when you're washing your hands. And then let the hand sanitizer dry on your hands. You always want to wear gloves when you are disinfecting your equipment. And we always disinfect our equipment before and after use. This is the general rule. Disinfecting your equipment before and after use. So we're going to be bringing this blood pressure cuff and any other equipment that we may need into this isolation room. For this purpose, we're just going to be cleaning the blood pressure cuff. But of course, you know you would need a stethoscope and thermometer. Now when you're dealing with someone who's in isolation, the best practice is to isolate the equipment as well. So you would leave the blood pressure cuff, thermometer, stethoscope, and any other equipment that you're using inside the isolation room. This will prevent you from cross-contaminating and spreading infection to the other residents. So that's the best practice. But sometimes it is not possible to just isolate equipment for all your residents who may be in isolation. So it really just kind of depends on your facility as well as their policies. So I am disinfecting my blood pressure cuff. I would also disinfect that as well. You always want to wear gloves, as I said, while you're disinfecting your equipment because the disinfectant can contain some very harsh carcinogenic chemicals, and you don't want to expose yourself to those chemicals. Alright, so after I finished disinfecting my equipment, and then I will wash my hands because the rule is that every time you take off your gloves, you disinfect or sanitize your hands or wash your hands. Alright, so this is not sterile procedures. This is medical asepsis, where we're removing as many harmful bacteria, pathogens as possible. So now I'm ready to put on my PPEs, and I just follow the same order. If we stick with a particular principle, then you guys will never have to question, what goes on first and what is taken off last. So the first thing I want to do is put on my mask. This is a surgical mask. This is good for droplet isolation. The two sides, one side is darker than the other, so this dark yellow is the side that's going to be on the outside. and the lighter color is going to be next to my face. It also has a thin strip of it's not metal, like a flexible metal. This goes toward my nose so that I can have the surgical mask fit pretty snugly, as much as it can, around my nose. And then I want to put on my isolation gown. So I'm working from top to bottom. When you're talking about isolation, the areas of this gown that's considered clean would be the side that's close to my body, the side that would come into contact with my uniform. And the side that's considered contaminated, of course, would be the outside, the side that comes into contact with the isolation room. Now, I like to tie the ties first, then put it over my head, but this is just a matter of preference. You guys can tie the tie for your neck behind your head if you like. And then working top to bottom, I will now tie the strings for my waist. And the goal is to overlap, trying to cover as much of your uniform as possible. And last but not least comes the gloves. Gloves are always put on last and taken off first. Now the goal for this is to make sure you have the cuff of your sleeve tucked into your gloves. You want to create a clean buffer zone. When you go into that isolation room, you need to have an area that's close to your hands that's going to be free from contamination from that isolation room. So that's why we kind of stuff it down inside the gloves. Okay. Another trick to the trade is to, and I'll back up and show you another little trick. What we do is to just kind of puncture our thumb through this isolation gown. If you have these types of isolation gowns, it makes it very easy. And now I can put my gloves on and not have to worry that my isolation gown will come out from underneath the gloves. So like that. Now I'm ready to go into my isolation room. With my PPEs on, I have my pen and my paper in my pocket. I've already disinfected my equipment. I got my barrier for my watch. So now we shall enter into the room. Okay, so I'm entering into the room, and I'll place my barrier down for my watch. Now, as it stands right now, I am clean. I have not touched the resident. I have not touched their equipment. Theoretically, the only thing that would be considered dirty would be my mask, because obviously I'm in a room where they have some kind of condition where that can be spread through droplets. So theoretically, this would be the only thing that is considered contaminated. Once I touch the equipment or the resident, then that's when I become contaminated. So, as I said, I have my watch on the barrier, and I'm just going to simulate getting their vital signs. So, I got the person's blood pressure. Now, I'm considered dirty. The blood pressure cuff is considered dirty. Dirty can touch dirty. So, this can be set down on any place in this room except for where my watch is. So, I'm just going to set it down here on the table. Then I would record my vital signs on a small section of this barrier, paper towel, so that when I get ready to leave the room, I can just copy my vital sign results right off of this barrier. Now, best circumstances, as I said, would be to leave this blood pressure cuff here in the room and isolate it with the resident. But if you're in a facility where you have to transport this out of the room, then I will show you now how to do that. So I will now have to take off my gloves. And remember, I have this small little buffer zone that has no bacteria, that has no contaminants on it. Throw my gloves away, and I remove that little slip from around my thumb. And now I will wash my hands. So I use sanitizer and hand washing interchangeably. So sanitize my hands. And if I think that I'm going to cross-contaminate again, when I'm cleaning my blood pressure cuff, then of course go ahead on and take off your gown as well and put on a new gown. When in doubt, always go for the safest. But I think I can clean the equipment without letting it come into contact with my dirty gown again. So I've disinfected my hands. Get a pair of new gloves. Put my finger, this was the way I showed you how to keep that down in your gloves. Wrap it around like that. Now I'm ready to disinfect my equipment. So with the disinfectant wipes that are found in the room, I'm going to disinfect my blood pressure cuff. So I have 2 disinfectant wipes. Actually, there's 3 here. That's okay. At least 2 disinfectant wipes to cover my hands. And I pick up my blood pressure cuff, and then I start to disinfect. Alright. Disinfect both sides. Now some facilities have spray bottles of disinfectant and you wipe it that way, but whatever your facility does, follow their procedures. Just kind of working my way down here. So this is a little bit of a challenge. As I said, best practice is to leave it in the room. Being very careful. If you touch it, of course, if it's a clean area that touches your gown, of course, you would have to re-disinfect. So again, as I said, it sure is a lot easier just to isolate the equipment. Let's get this little area once more time. One more time. Let's do that again here. Last but not least, this little area here. All right. And we are all done disinfecting our equipment. Then now I am ready to take this on the outside. Now I'm not in the bathroom, so what I would do is go to the bathroom and get a clean paper towel to open up my door if the door is closed. And then I would just simply set this on the outside on the isolation cart. So that's how you can disinfect your equipment without cross-contaminating. All right. The other thing we'll have to do is take care of this garbage. Typically, they will have larger garbage cans, more appropriate for the healthcare facility. So for our purposes though, this will do just fine. So I am dirty, the garbage can is dirty. Dirty can touch dirty. So with my dirty glove, I pull up my biohazard bag and tie it off, like so, keeping it away from my uniform. And then someone on the outside of the room will also have a biohazard bag, and they will receive this garbage. So the second person will get the biohazard bag and wrap it around their hands. Can we pause? I need Jason. Brother says go. Okay, the second person who's going to be on the outside ready to receive this garbage, they have their hands protected. There is a cuff protecting this person's hand. And then she will open up the bag wide, and then I will aim it dead to the center of the garbage bag, and then she will bring it up the sides and tie it off and take it to the soil utility room and place it in another biohazard waste container. Okay, now I'm ready to bring up the new biohazard waste bag for my garbage can. Alright, so now I am done and I am ready to come out of my PPEs. So the order would be gloves first. So, pulling from the center of my gloved hand, I pull off the glove, inverting it inside and out. Take my 2 fingers and go up underneath my glove and invert the glove inside out and throw it away. Next, I'm removing my thumb again. This was the area that was considered clean, that was up underneath my gown. Now I'm disinfecting my hands or washing my hands. Every time you take off a PPE, you should disinfect your or wash your hands or sanitize your hands. Now I'm ready to take off my gown. Reverse order as I put it on. Reaching in the back, I'm just aiming for the ties, and remember, this part of my gown is considered clean, the part that did not come into contact with the resident or the environment. Now I'm going to take my fingers and go up underneath the cuff. So remember, this was the area that was underneath my gloves that's considered clean. So I'll protect this hand, take this hand and touch the sleeve of this gown and just pull it off. Then gather it together, being very careful that I don't cross-contaminate. I want both of my edges, so this edge and that edge, to be facing each other. And remember, I said this side of the gown is clean because this is the side that was in contact with my uniform. And then just carefully roll it down, keeping everything contained. Throw it away. Sanitize my hands again. Remember, after each PPE, you want to wash your hands or sanitize. Making sure you're covering all surfaces. Same areas that we would clean when we're washing our hands with soap and water. Okay, now I am clean. My hands are clean. My uniform is clean. I can go into my pocket now and get my notepad and pen to record my vital signs. Okay. Alright. Now remember, because I am clean and everything in this room is dirty, I would never record my vital signs on the table. Everything in this room is considered contaminated, and I would have contaminated my notepad that would then go back into my pocket. So you actually have to record it like this in your hand. Now my watch is clean, so I would pick up my watch, put it in my pocket. Now I can either be careful and pick up the barrier here where my watch was lying, but you never know. If there's a breeze of wind that comes by and causes this edge to come into contact with your skin, then you have cross-contaminated. So a better practice would be just to get a clean paper towel, to go to the bathroom, get a clean paper towel, and use this to pick up your barrier and throw it away. And then go back to the bathroom again. As you're getting ready to exit, get a clean paper towel. This is my example of a clean paper towel to open up the door and step on the outside of the room. Now you can take your mask off. I'm taking my mask off by pulling from the ear loops and then throwing it away in the garbage. Now let me reverse. You would never want to take off your mask by pulling it from your mouth like this. Remember, all of this is considered contaminated. You always pull from the ear loops. Now if you have a mask that ties, usually there's a set of ties for the head, a set of ties for the neck. If that's what you have to work with, you always want to untie the ties to the neck first and then the head. If you were to loosen the ties on your head first, then this mask would fall on your uniform and now you've been contaminated. So again, let me stress again, for the tie masks, untie the neck first, and they would just dangle, and then you untie the tie to your head, holding the ties like so, and throwing the mask into the garbage. So again, after you take off each PPE, the last thing you want to do is, on the outside of the room, is to wash your hands or sanitize your hands. And that is isolation procedures.